Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome to Unit 2, Part 2, Biomolecules, Day 2. Oh boy, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Lots of twos. Let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to be looking at Biomolecules, Day 2. But I'm going to be showing you a slideshow presentation, so I'm not going to be writing directly and with the ones that you're going to be seeing on your sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the notes sheet, but our aim today is going to be how do cells use chemicals to maintain homeostasis. And some of the chemicals that they use are known as biomolecules, and that's what we're talking about today. All right, and this is what we're looking at. So again, I'm going to be showing you the answers on a slideshow presentation as I explain, but it is matching this handout that you should see on your Google Classroom stream. And we're starting with our aim: how do cells use chemicals to maintain homeostasis? So homeostasis, it's a pretty important term in living environment. And when we're talking about homeostasis, every time you see that word written on your handout, I want you to write balance. So that is what homeostasis means, right? You can see here, this is a human and they are balanced. Homeostasis is the term used to describe all of your body's cells, all of your organs, all of the organelles within the cells, everything all at once, achieving this stable state that allows us to experience comfort. And many processes in our bodies depend upon homeostasis in order to occur properly, and many things that happen to you throughout your day, for example, getting thirsty or getting hungry, are your body's attempts to reach this homeostasis. If you're thirsty, your cells need water. You drink water, those water molecules are able to enter your cells via diffusion and help your body achieve this important state of homeostasis, the great balancing act. So again, that's all of your body's cells, all of your organelles, all of your organs, all of your organ systems working together to maintain this stable state. And that is the healthiest way for your body to be. Not only do humans maintain homeostasis, but all living organisms, including cells themselves, maintain this important state of homeostasis. And today we're going to be talking about how our cells use chemicals to maintain this state of homeostasis. So what is a carbohydrate? You guys may be familiar with carbohydrates or carbs as something that you eat, right? And usually we think about carbohydrates as something that is maybe bad for us or unhealthy for us to eat, but carbohydrates are in many things that we eat, including vegetables and fruits and whole grains, nuts and seeds and beans. And then these bad carbohydrates are usually simple carbohydrates, and good carbs are complex carbohydrates. And that has to do with the number of bonds within the molecules themselves. So complex carbohydrates have many bonds. These many bonds, within each bond, there's energy stored, and it takes your body a longer time to digest these more complex molecules. So as a result, you have longer, more sustainable energy compared to simple carbohydrates, which are in things like white rice, refined bread, and also soda, sugary juices, and candy. And these simple carbs are usually monosaccharides. They have just one bond. And although there may be a lot of energy, a lot of calories in that bond, our body's able to digest it immediately, break that bond, and as a result, it doesn't provide us with that long, sustainable energy, and instead can give us a quick burst of energy that goes away quickly that we might refer to as a sugar high. But that is enough. What is a carbohydrate? A carbohydrate is a compound that you eat in food, such as fruits, vegetables, and breads. And we're going to talk more about carbohydrates. Hopefully you remembered a little something about carbohydrates from day one as well, as we read a passage about carbohydrates there. So our body uses carbohydrates to help us maintain homeostasis. How does our body do this? So, Part A notes, the parts of a cell are made up of large, complex molecules, often called biomolecules. So these biomolecules are large, complex, organic molecules. And they're organic molecules, which means they have carbon and hydrogen atoms inside. And you may have heard that term organic before when you're at the grocery store, referring to things that are grown without the use of pesticides. But in this case, we're talking about organic in a chemistry sense, which means contains carbon and hydrogen. And biomolecules, these large or macromolecules, are made up of smaller, simpler pieces. Like you may remember from day one, the smaller, simpler pieces of carbohydrates are called monosaccharides or single sugars. So as we go on, what are biomolecules? Again, biomolecules are organic compounds made by living things. They're also called biochemicals, and some are very large. And the term we use to describe these large molecules is macromolecules, macro meaning large. There are thousands of different biomolecules, but they're separated into 4 categories: carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. And this mini unit within unit 2 is all about these 4 biomolecules: carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So first, let's talk about carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are molecules made of sugars. A sugar contains carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in a ratio of 1:1. And you guys might remember that formula for glucose, C6H12O6, and it meets that same ratio: 6 carbon atoms, 12 hydrogen atoms, and 6 oxygen atoms make up that larger molecule of glucose. And you can see here, this is the chemical structure of glucose. And if you count them, you'll see that there are 6 carbon atoms, there are 12 hydrogen atoms, and there are 6 oxygen atoms in this glucose. And this sort of pentose shape, or in this case, hexagonal shape, is typical of a carbohydrate. So you want to recognize that shape. If you see that, you know it's a carbohydrate. Glucose is a common sugar found in grape juice. So glucose is a monosaccharide, not just in grape juice, but in apple juice, in candy. You'll see glucose in many different things. Glucose is usually just the common term that, or the not common term, the scientific term that describes what we usually refer to as sugar. So, glucose is a monosaccharide or single sugar. Mono meaning one. Simple sugar. 2 sugars can be linked together to make a disaccharide. Di meaning 2. And you can see here, this person is experiencing a carbohydrate high from eating all of that white bread. All of those white breads are simple sugars or not complex carbs, which complex carbs, you might remember, are better for longer, more sustainable energy. So disaccharides are also simple sugars, but many sugars can be linked to make a polysaccharide. And polysaccharides are those more complex carbs, the ones that are healthier for us to consume. Polysaccharides. Poly means many, and many having to refer to many bonds. And these polysaccharides are complex sugars that give the most energy. So they're the healthiest and best for us to consume for long, sustainable energy. Next, let's talk about lipids. Lipids are usually referred to as fats. So lipids are fats. Lipids are another class of biomolecules. Examples include fats, phospholipids, steroids, and waxes. But the general term for lipids is fats in general. Lipids are made from glycerol and fatty acid chains, and we're about to look at the molecular structure. The main functions of lipids include storing energy in the form of fat and controlling the movement of water molecules. And that happens within the specialized structure of the cell membrane, which we're about to take a brief look at and explore more in Unit 4. So the main function of lipids in human bodies is to store energy. So if you consume too much energy, if you eat too many calories, your body will store the excess in the form of lipids or fats. And this is the molecular structure of lipids, and you want to recognize this sort of long hydrocarbon tail. And I'm going to circle what I'm talking about. This is the tail here. And if you see something that looks like this, and you can see here the tail is sort of tipping off the end, you want to recognize this type of a molecular structure as a lipid. And you can see here this is made of glycerol and fatty acids. And that is the molecular structure of a lipid. But lipids are very important in our bodies, not just because we store excess fat in lipids, but also because lipids make up our cell membrane. And the lipids in the cell membrane are a special kind of lipids called phospholipids, and that refers to their hydrophilic or water-loving heads and their hydrophobic or water-fearing tails. And because they have these specialized water-loving heads and water-fearing tails, the phospholipid bilayer, so 2 layers of these lipids, forms at the cell membrane and creates this selectively permeable barrier that helps protect our cells from anything that shouldn't get into the cell, and also helps allow our cells to communicate with each other by controlling the selective passage of molecules through that phospholipid bilayer. That specialized structure is made possible thanks to lipids. So we need to make sure that we eat fat in our diet. You might hear fat is something that it's not healthy for us to eat. Well, we need to eat fats in our diet because these fats help make up the cell membrane in all of our cells. Pretty important stuff. So the next thing we're going to talk about, something that you've probably heard you want to make sure you get plenty of in your diet, is protein. Proteins are so important, and you hear that you want to have a lot of them in your diet because they perform so many functions in the body. Enzymes are proteins, many hormones are proteins. Proteins make up structures in your body like your nails and your hair. Proteins are extremely important. They make up the structure of our muscles. They help our cells communicate with one another. There are protein channels in that phospholipid bilayer of the cell membrane. Proteins are extremely important, perhaps maybe the most important biomolecule. However, Just to note, we get proteins in the form of amino acids from many different sources in our diet, and it is possible for you to get all of the amino acids that you need in your diet without consuming meat. Although protein is in meat, and meats are a very good source of protein. And we want to remember with all of these different biomolecules, we're connecting what's happening on a cellular level with our bodies, and we can also think about nutritionally how these things fit into our diet, because the reason that we need to eat carbohydrates and fats and proteins is because our bodies use these different components to make up our cells and to make us. So a protein is a molecule made up of amino acids. Amino acids are the monomer of proteins. And remember, the monomer of carbohydrates is monosaccharides, and lipids are made up of fatty acids and glycerol. Proteins perform many jobs in the cell and may be involved in structure, support, movement, communication, transportation, and carrying out chemical reactions in the form of enzymes. And this is a joke here, maximum 2 servings of protein, and all of these different things are about to get eaten. And I do think this joke from The Simpsons or perhaps Futurama is referring to a very good source of protein. It's eating other living beings, specifically other animals, because they store protein in their muscles, which is usually what you eat when you eat the meat of an animal, just like we store protein in our muscles. But again, you can get proteins from a lot of sources in your diet that don't necessarily include meat. So proteins are extremely important to our bodies, and we want to make sure that we eat all of the amino acids that our bodies require so that our bodies can synthesize or assemble all of the different proteins that we need to carry out our life functions. And think back to the first part of Unit 2, which cell organelle is processing all of these amino acids and using them to synthesize new proteins? The ribosomes. So when you eat something that contains protein, it's important that you get the complete amino acids, so all of the different amino acids that make up different proteins. That way, when we digest our food, those different amino acids that are broken apart are able to enter the cell and be configured and reconfigured into the new and different proteins that our bodies need to carry out their life functions. So, in summary, complex carbohydrates are used for long-term energy. Remember, we're talking about things like whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds, and we're contrasting this from simple carbohydrates like glucose that are found in things like sugary sodas, white bread, and white rice. And we want to make sure we get lots of complex carbohydrates in our diet because the energy is stored in those chemical bonds, and complex carbs have more bonds. Lipids store energy, specifically excess energy, and they're good for long-term energy storage. Right, so let's say that you don't need the excess energy at this time, so you eat a little bit too much food and your body stores that excess energy as fat. A couple months later, you don't have as much food, and your body is able to break down those lipids, break down those fats, and get energy from those lipids. That's what we mean by long-term energy storage, especially in prehistoric times, or even just 100 or more years ago, when humans went through longer periods of famine and then excess food and famine. We were able to survive because we have this adaptation or mechanism that allows us to store excess fat on our bodies and then later break it down for energy in the future. Now you might just want to break down some of those extra lipids that are stored in your body for aesthetic reasons, but they also serve an important goal as far as our survival. Proteins are used for many different functions, including chemical communication, in the form of enzymes, transportation in the form of protein channels in the cell membrane, and also to build muscle tissue and other tissues in our bodies like our hair and nails. All right, so that's it for Biomolecules Day 2. And it will allow you to understand the nutrition facts a little bit better when you're looking at your food. And this image and these nutrition facts will go with an additional assignment that you guys are going to get as homework to read a little bit more about these very important biomolecules that are critical for all of our life functions. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. Don't forget to complete your exit ticket. Have a super fantastic day, and please make sure you like and subscribe. And hit that little bell for notifications, and leave a comment below if you like this video. All right, guys, bye.